welcome to my talk. My name is Elise Marchouba, and this talk is You Can't Choose Your Fans, or can you? I just want to start with a quick precursor in saying that I'm not a social media dedicated employee, I'm not a community dedicated employee. I work full-time as a producer at Samurai Punk, so all the things that I'll be talking about are questions and ideas that I've thought about whilst trying to help build up the brand of Samurai Punk as a studio, as a company. And I just want to present these to you as what kind of questions should you be asking yourself or your team to help build up a brand around your studio. So a lot of the best talks we see have dedicated takeaways. This is what you need to do this, follow this guideline. So the best way I've thought to propose that is as questions. So at the end of each core slide, or at the end of each core point, I'll bring up a question with some example solutions, but it is not a one-fit-all solution. It will rely on you adapting it to your own team and to your own company as to what you see fits best. So as a quick rundown of my background, who I am, why I'm talking to you today. So yeah, my background and silly photos of me that humanize me and make it less likely for you to be mean to me, which is a big point in one of my slides. I started at King David from 18 months old to 18 years old, so I actually stayed at the same school my entire schooling life, and it was a pretty small private Jewish school, so there was a graduating class of maybe about 50 students, so we never really had more than, I'd say, about 200 people per campus, so it was always pretty small. And then after that I studied at SAE Quantum, a Bachelor of Interactive Entertainment with a major in game design, and when I finished that, I still wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. So my degree was in design, but I still had this feeling that I might maybe wanted to be an artist, or I wasn't really 100% sure. So after that, I ended up working at EB Games for a couple of years. I went on from casual to an assistant manager pretty quickly and worked within the Melbourne CBD stores. And then I got my first big break in games at Big Ant Studios. So I was the associate producer there for about 3 years, working on a bunch of different games, primarily sports. Across all these, the sort of running theme is that I've always worked in relatively small teams, which I've learnt I definitely prefer. As far as, I suppose, production and management and people management in general, I always tried to rely on I guess, personal skills and learning who the team was. So I knew, everyone's names. I tried to remember people's birthdays. I knew what they liked, what they didn't, who watches Survivor, so I could bond with them about that. Basically, like starting to focus on what I had to connect with each person in the teams, so that I could have a closer personal relationship with all of them. Like I said, after 3 years at Big Ant, I got a job at Samurai Punk. So I'm the producer at Samurai Punk. We're a team of about 9 people in total, working on a bunch of different stuff, very, very different titles to what I was working on before. So I've worked on Feather, Table of Tales, Florence, Rumba First Blood, and now Justice Sucks Recharged, and a bunch of other exciting things that are coming soon. So at Samurai Punk, I've had a lot of amazing opportunities. I've been able to travel to Boston twice now for PAX East, San Francisco for GDC, Wellington for New Zealand GDC, and maybe one day I'll be able to travel again. Wouldn't that be nice? This is a photo of the team. Sometimes we go outside and eat lots of sushi and just have fun and just chill afternoons in the park when the sun comes out. I get to work with some of the coolest, most creative people in the games industry, in my personal opinion. Yeah, just generally, we have a pretty good time. We have a lot of fun. We do podcasts and streams, and we sell apparel, and we have movie hangouts, and we have ice cream wars and Japanese food feasts, and a whole bunch of stuff. This is just a little image that I made up of a bunch of different photos from us from different times that we have on our website, just to show us having fun. Before I go further, I just want to bring up some semi-housekeeping rules, and I want to put these ideas out there because they are things that I believe very strongly in, and I think they are important to keep in mind when I keep going through the rest of the talk. So the first point, making games for love and for money are both completely valid. If you happen to do it for both, that's even better, but there's nothing wrong with making games for money. I very passionately believe that, and that it's not up to anyone to question what motivates someone to do the job they do. The other one, there can be a really strong stigma around the term business being used within the games industry. at the end of the day, the word you use to describe what you do, I think can really alter your attitude. So whilst I love making video games, I also love buying new clothes and supporting friends in small businesses and going to the pub to get a beer. All those things need money, so I need to make money to be able to spend money. I've chosen this GIF of Survivor because I think it's really important when we discuss businesses and making money to acknowledge the difference between influence and manipulation, because I think often those terms are used incorrectly, and it's vital that we get them correct. So, whilst the real world isn't one where one winner takes all, it is still competitive. The games industry is incredibly competitive, whether we're talking about trying to get a job or trying to get your demo into a big exhibition, or just in general trying to keep your company alive. It is competitive, and it is important to think, how do I make myself the best? How do I get my studio ahead of everyone else? And that doesn't mean to step on other people to do it. It doesn't mean you have to vote other studios off the island. It just means it's important to remember it is a business. You do need to make money in order to survive, and that has to be at the forefront a lot of the time. Be a local place, a familiar place. Whether it's a bar, a coffee shop, or a restaurant, one of the most exciting feelings for a lot of us is to be a regular, is to go into any sort of establishment and to have people know your name, to know what you like. Maybe it's you go to the same cafe at 11 a.m. every morning, and when you get there, they already have your cup of coffee waiting for you. It's a really satisfying feeling. So how do we transfer that into studios and into developers and publishers? How do we make our regulars know we care about them? And how do we take someone who has a small interest in maybe one of your games and make them a super fan? So the question being, hey, how do you make a fan feel like a regular? When it comes to looking at a studio in comparison to other businesses, let's say we're looking at cafes, especially in so many areas of Melbourne, we have a street with 10 cafes on it. Well, they all make coffee. It's really up to the people working there to make you interested in going into one over the other. Generally speaking, I mean, I don't drink coffee, so maybe I'm not the right person to say it, but generally speaking, coffee is coffee, and some people will obviously make it better than others, but in general, a lot of the reason why you will return to a place is because of the customer service, because of the way they make you feel. So you've got 10 cafes on a street and you choose one, and you're like, this is the best place. Not only are you going to choose to go to that place more often, but you're going to tell your friends and your coworkers to go there as well, because you're going to be passionate about that place and say, no, they have the best coffee, and you get a free one every 5 times or whatever. So that person is not only a fan of your product and a fan of your company, but they're bringing other fans with them as well. So it's important to focus on the fact that every person that buys your game is special because they chose yours. They have, especially on Steam, let's say, it's not easy to find games. They have to make an effort to find your game. And if they did and they bought it and they've played it, they're special, and they have the potential to be one of those people that will go out and tell 10 other people, this game's the best, you have to play this game. So how do we focus on making sure that, one, we can identify those potential people better, and how do we make sure that they stay around? So some examples or ideas that you could use. Could you give away free codes of any of your games if you have smaller games? If you have live service games, could you be giving them codes for specific in-game items that help give them some sort of advantage? Do you have games that are in alpha or beta, and you could get them to help test and be involved in the process and get them to give you ideas? With beta testing, I would definitely recommend that's a longer term one. So I would probably not give people access to that if they've joined, our Discord yesterday, but maybe if they've been around for a while and they've proven to be a positive person in our community, that makes them feel really special. If you stream your games, or if you do any streams, could you identify where the bulk of your fan base is? So if you're an Australian company and you have a lot of people in America who are really passionate about your games, maybe you should be streaming in the morning instead of the afternoon. Especially if you pose that to them and say, look, we really want to stream, we really enjoy streaming, but we know it's not a really comfortable time for you. What would be a good time for you? suddenly they feel like they have the power, they're in control, and they have, you know, they have that sense of pride because you have gone out of your way as a studio to make this person or these people feel important and that you want them to be involved, and that's a really powerful feeling to be able to give to someone. And then there's really simple stuff. If you have a Discord and someone says that they watched a film and it's amazing, it's the most important film in their life and they've never seen anything so good, why don't you watch the film? Maybe you could, you know, watch it and then come back the next day and be like, hey, you were right, that was a super cool film, I really liked the cinematography, or this actor is my favorite. And that's created a really strong bond out of sitting back and watching a movie. So those sort of little things are a really good way to build up that trust and affection between you and your fan base. So lesson number 2, be transparent, be human. It's a common thing that people are much more likely to yell or fight or complain at a person or at a company when they don't see the face behind it. It's a lot easier to complain about work when you work at a faceless corporation and the person at the top owns an island and you don't even know who they are, versus being in a small team where you see the boss, you see the people up top, you see the struggles that they go through, and you see that they care and that they're on the same journey that you are. So being transparent, being human, how do you show that to your potential fans? How do you show that to the people out there to say, we are not a faceless corporation, we are real humans, we're real people with feelings and emotions and passion for what we do. So an important thing to separate when we discuss being human and being, you know, the face is establishing whether you want to be a literal face, whether you want people to look at you and know you from everyone else on the street and say that's that person who works at that studio and represents them, versus a more ambiguous face of your company. So how do we focus on building that, and what are the good steps to showing your personality a bit more and the fact that you're a human? Discord, Slack, anything like that is a really good place, any sort of forum where communication is really easy on both sides. It lets people get to know you and you get to know them, which is also really important, because if you're building something for your fans and you want them to care, you need to know who they are to create the right products for them. So, for example, in the Samurai Park Discord, we have a bunch of channels that have nothing to do with games. We have music and movies and foodies and gardening and a whole bunch of stuff like that. We want to get to know people outside of just which game they play of ours, and we want them to know us for that as well. It's nice when they, you know, react with specific emojis or specific phrases to you because they know who you are and they know your personality. It makes it feel so much more personal overall. When we discuss, you know, making games for our fans, you know, we're looking at this concept of we are making the games for you, like you being this force online. All of you, everyone around the world, we are making games for you. And the only way we can do that is if we know who you are and what you want. So opening that conversation up is 2 parts. It's one, it's super important to open up that conversation, but it's also critical that along the way to get there, you're building trust and respect with these people so they know who you are, what your values are, and they want to give you the time of day to give you that information. So, question number 2. How can you show yourself without being the literal face of the studio? So, I've got a couple of suggestions here. It's not going to fit for everyone, but some ideas. So one of them is not to show a singular face, but to show lots of faces. So I've seen that a lot more recently with League of Geeks social media, is they have regular updates where they introduce you to the team. It's becoming a really common trend on Twitter as well, of like, meet the team. So it's not just about one person, it's about getting to know everyone. And it takes the pressure off an individual. So you can show off the personality or the different interests the people in the team have, and suddenly you're creating a picture of intrigue and diversity, because there's one person that really likes gardening and another person that plays 20 hours of FIFA every day. And if you're a person that likes gardening and playing FIFA, you've hit the jackpot. Like, that's amazing for you. So now you're going to feel really compelled to get to know these people on a more personal level, or be more invested in their success because you feel a connection with them. So another idea, you could have a mascot of some description. So a lot of bigger companies will have this with, you know, I mostly just think like fast food chains like Red Rooster or Wendy's or whatever. But you know, they have a character, and that's who they see. Or Colonel Sanders, that's a great example. They made a game out of that because they're such an iconic character. So could you have that? Maybe it could be a plushie of your company logo, or like an animal that represents your team. Maybe you have a mysterious pinata, and that's who makes all your games. And the name is Penny the Pinata, and you see photos of Penny coding games and going to like drawing classes. You know, that's just an example, but that's like a fun, creative way that people join in on your team's adventures without actually having to reveal any identities or share too much personal information. The third option that I've written here is to hire a social media manager. Hiring anyone in social media is always a good job, always a good idea, especially if you don't want to be doing it yourself. There are plenty of people out there who are comfortable being on Instagram stories all the time and Facebook Live. And why not just hire someone to do something that you're not comfortable with? Obviously, it depends on budgets and a lot of different factors, but it is a worthwhile thing to consider. Number 3, your brand is a person. So be an interesting person. Be interesting. Be three-dimensional. You aren't the games you play or make, so neither should your brand. When you meet someone who works in the games industry, you might initially bond over games and bond over the fact that you make games, but then you probably realize how much more you have in common with that person. Whether it's that you love a specific horror film franchise, a surrealist artist, a particular season of Survivor really stands out to you. There's so many more things involved in a person and what makes you connect to a person. Your company should be the same. And you should let your fans see this side too. What does your team do to bond? What kind of music are you listening to in the office today? Share some of your outside of being just a game developer life with them. And that doesn't mean that you have to be overly personal. It just means that you should let them in a little bit. Let them get to know you as a person with whatever you feel comfortable sharing. It's initially a really strange concept to overcome for a lot of people. I know I'm still struggling with this, with the idea that random people in the world want to know about my day. So you don't see articles on social media or in the newspaper that's like, you'll never believe what this game dev ate for lunch today. So it's not something that's naturally a part of our lives, especially not in comparison to when you look at other people who typically are influencers, whether it's celebrities or musicians or actors, people who generally are more inclined to put their face on things. So it is a bit of a weird one to get over and to understand, but it is a fact. Your fans want to know about you. They care about you and they care about what you're doing. When I reach out to the community, mostly on Discord, and I ask them, you know, I want to stream more, I want to put more on our Instagram stories, what do you want to see? And I expect crazy things, but they always just say like, we just want to know more about your day. We just want to know more about the team. What are you doing today? Did you all go for lunch together? You know, what's the weather like in Melbourne? There's so many simple things that you can give them. You know, it's raining here today. Who likes rain? Really simple stuff. People just want to connect, especially this year when so many people are in various lockdowns or isolation. They just want to connect with people. They want to interact. They're just so excited to be able to talk to someone that, you know, you should be providing that as best as possible when possible. So the question, what makes your studio unique besides the games you make? What can you show them? What can you show people watching or people engaging in your products or in your company that make you stand out and that make you more likely to be that cafe out of the 10 that they choose to come back to? Maybe your team can make a Spotify playlist. Maybe you all have like drastically different types of music, and you share that with them, and you know, you all put in a couple tracks each and you show it with the community and go like, who has the best taste in music? Or maybe you do like one of those personality test things and you put in everyone in the team's personality and your fans can go on and it's like, you know, like which Samurai Punk dev team member are you? I don't know, fun things like that. Are you, I don't know, maybe your team are like really competitive about sports. Maybe you could make like a fantasy sports league with the people in your Discord. Maybe that's something that they would engage with really well. Again, a lot of this does come back to you need to know your fans. You need to know what they're interested in, and what sort of brings them to you, and harness that. So if you're a team, you know, if you've made a let's say Stardew Valley, and everyone is really interested in like gardening and farming and making those friendships and everything like that, maybe that's not the best place for a fantasy football league. But it's up to you. It's up to you to get to know what people are interested in outside of just that game, and that's where you'll really shine. Anna Kendrick. That's it. The whole slide. Anna Kendrick. I just think she's amazing, and she's a really good example of bringing personality forward. So obviously she's an actress, so she's used to having her face out there a lot more, but just in general, like when you watch interviews from her, and I think a big reason why she's got as much fame as she has is she's so personable and likable and friendly, and she's just sweet and funny and charming, and is happy to talk about when things go wrong, when things go right, and she just seems really, really genuine. And I think that's something that we could really focus on, of like, she's not trying to be perfect, she's not trying to be over the top with anything, she just seems like a normal, nice person. And in a world when we look at celebrities and people like, you know, like Paris Hilton or the Kardashians, these like big personality types that look like they're putting on an act, it's very transparent, and obviously they make money and they succeed in their own ways, and that's up to you as to which path you'd rather take. But for me personally, I like to look at people like Anna Kendrick and say, how could I look like that? How could our team look like that? How could people spend a month on our Discord and, you know, associate 3 words being like genuine, witty, and charming, let's say. If those are the 3 words that would take away, that'd be amazing. How do we do that? I don't know. Maybe we can look at other people who have those ideals or have those values, or make people feel that way, and see how they do it. Number 4, life as an indie. 2 core components here. 1, you're not likely to be releasing lots of things frequently, but also you're not always in a position to even be talking about what you are working on. So while some companies can pump out multiple games a year or 1 game a year, often in the same genre, so let's say sports games, the companies that you know are going to be releasing a FIFA title around the same time every year, even if they can't talk about the specificities of what they're doing, you do know that they're working on a soccer game, and you can still keep your fans engaged with that. And even more so, because they know what's happening, you can slowly start dropping hints throughout the entire year. Whereas a lot of indie teams, not only do you maybe you're not able to talk about what you're working on, but you might have to completely shift your focus and your tone. So at Samurai Punk, we were working on Feather, and we were talking about that, which is a co-op game, or online game, where you fly around as a bird and you can play with other players, and there's no communication, and there's a lot of talk within our community of relaxation and meditation and all those sort of things. And then suddenly we're talking about Justice Sucks Recharged, where you're a robot vacuum cleaner that's effectively a serial killer, and we're shifting the tone on them quite drastically. So there wasn't an easy process of saying, well, hey, Feather fans, we know you really like relaxation, so here's the game for you with lots of murder. How do you create that tonal shift? So it's a tough thing to do, and it's definitely something I'm still interested in exploring further. But that balance between making the games that you want to make and potentially trying out new things and working on a few different prototypes, not knowing which direction to go in, But also keeping your fans engaged and happy and excited and not bored and not feeling like you're keeping them in the dark is a really hard balance, especially for indies. So we have to look at the concept of what are we doing for fans or for people trying to engage in our communities whilst we don't have that happening. So there's sort of two main directions you can take it. You can sort of say, like, you can be really, really transparent and be like, this is the type of game we're making. I don't know, we're not sure about it. What do you think about it? Here's a daily update. Here are maybe some demos of the game, or here are assets, or here's a little video of part of the game. Or you kind of go the other way of not being super clear about that, keeping what you're doing a little bit more private, but still occupying the community in some way. So, you know, I'm just going to juggle here and keep you entertained until we actually have something that I can show you, because I don't want you to be bored while you're waiting. And then that sort of leads into the important question of what is that valuable thing that you can be sharing and discussing in the meantime? So the question, what are you doing to keep people engaged and providing them to support you? And that's coming back to what I brought up at the beginning of the importance of establishing that you are running a business and that it is meant to be profitable. So it's not enough to just say, you know, oh, I hope they're not bored. It's more important. These are the people that will buy our games and spend money on what we're making. So if we're releasing one game a year that costs $15, this fan wants to spend more than $15 a year on us, on supporting us. So what resources are we providing them to do that? So a really simple one that's pretty easy for a lot of teams is to say, wishlist our game, especially if you have things in the work and you are at all in a position to tell people what you're working on. And you can be really transparent about that as well. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but wishlists are really important for the formula of actually getting our game recognized on Steam and getting it into places where other people might find it. So can you please wishlist our game? Tell your friends to wishlist our game. That's something that they can do to support you, and even more so, it doesn't even cost them anything, but can have a really good result for you in the long term. I sort of mentioned before as well, like, if you have a fan that's really excited about what you're creating, let's say, you know, there's a huge wave of skateboarding games coming out now. If you're really, really passionate about this, like, indie skate game coming out that looks really cool, chances are, if you're super passionate about skating, you probably have other friends who are as well. So that's perfect. You go to that specific group of people and you tell them about this game, and they're going to get excited about it as well. So it's working on establishing those relationships with different people who have access points for you to bring you new fans. And again, that doesn't cost them anything to tell their friend to play your game or to wishlist your game, or at some point, hopefully, to buy your game. But if they've been along the ride, they're as excited about it as you are, hopefully. So they're going to want to spread the word as much as you are. In our case, obviously, we have a pretty specific case of we sell apparel. So we've got t-shirts and hats and beanies and pins and skateboards and everything that we can sell. And that's proven to be a really interesting avenue of making profit when we're not in a core game release time. So some examples of just in general apparel is, you know, these brands of Jayjays, Uniqlo, Zing, Hot Topic, heaps of them. They allow people to wear their passions on their chest, to literally show what they are excited about everywhere they go. And people love them. Like, you know, graphic tees has been a thing for so long, and it never goes out of style because there's always someone who wants to show their favorite supernatural character or their favorite band. You know, there's so many avenues of it, but, you know, when you go to a concert and you buy a t-shirt from it, and it's such a memorable thing for you because it's linked to that specific event, that specific time in your life. When you have events like PAX, that's a really similar thing. You buy a PAX t-shirt and you're like, yeah, PAX 07, not 07, in Australia, PAX 2017. Oh, I remember what was happening to me at that time. And you can have that effect on people still, even if it doesn't have a date or a year. people come to our booth and they buy this t-shirt and they feel good about it and they remember how exciting that year at PAX was for them. And you're letting people show their passions in a different way than just their extremely long Steam library. So I guess apparel is like quite specific for us, and I don't think it's a solution for every team because it's a lot of overhead. It's not a matter of just like selling shirts on the side. It is a lot of work, so you have to make sure that you're willing to either put the work in yourself or hire people who will do it for you. But the fundamental is, what can you be doing to provide people a chance to support you? If someone's acknowledged that they're passionate about the games that you make, like maybe you just release 100 t-shirts with your game logo on it, and it's just that, it's 100, it's limited, you put them for pre-order so you don't even buy excess stock. It's just, you let those 100 first fans feel really special because they now have a product that no one else has. So the Samurai Punk apparel was pre-existing before I started the company, which is really important to establish. It's run and organized by a lot of people over a long period of time. But we do have this system now where someone comes to us and they're a fan of our games and they like what we do. As an example, Feather, which has been out for a while now. Someone comes in, oh, I spent $15 on a game and I really love it. How else can I support you? Well, you can buy a Feather t-shirt on our store for $24.99. That's a really good way that they can support us outside of this time. So yeah, giving your fans a way to support you financially, besides just asking for free money as well. So I know a lot of people will have like tips and stuff like that, and you can do it that way, but there's a lot of other ways to do it as well. So, Twitch streaming is a huge one. If you can be successful in that, then you get people donating to you for your content that you're creating. You can have a Patreon where you create custom content for your fans, and OnlyFans, I don't know. Yeah, my sort of logic with apparel specifically. So let's say you're at a convention and you have people coming over to your booth and they want to look at games and they want to look at cool stuff to buy, and two of them come up and they really like video games, that's why they're there, and you try and get them to buy something, but they only play shooters. They have no interest in anything besides shooter, and the game you're trying to sell is a game about birds flying, with no action, no combat. That's a really hard sell. But if you have people coming over that are wearing t-shirts, and they like cool t-shirts, chances are there's going to be more people there that like cool t-shirts than like your specific type of game. So I could get, let's say, 10 people come over and 5 of them like at least one design. They're more likely to buy that one design, so they're going to spend, let's say, $25 on a t-shirt, and now I've suddenly made more money than I would on my game sales, which doesn't mean that the games aren't super important and aren't what we're there to do, but most teams pay a lot to be at PAX. So why not find a way to make that money back, and then suddenly the marketing spend isn't quite as drastic? So the question here, what do you want people to say your brand is about? Is it making the most creative, innovative experiences? Is it really polished, refined, simple games? A wacky group of friends who are always surprising you when you don't know what's next? When you look at different companies and what they've done, so the example of us and expanding to apparel and all these other things that we've done, a lot of it is a case of not stumbling into what your brand is. It's really important, whether you're starting a company or 5 years down the line, take a step back, take a second and say, what would you want people to say your brand is about? Because if you're just stumbling into it, you're not going to end up with a clear message, and that's going to muddy a lot of the waters along the way. Whereas if you take a step back and say, like, yeah, we really want people to think that we're innovative, creative, and wacky. Like, those are the 3 core words: innovative, creative, and wacky. Then everything you choose to do, every social media post you put out, every interaction you have on Discord, every game that you release, you take it back to those 3 fundamental words and say, does it fit? If not, it's not the right move for us, and suddenly it becomes a lot easier to make some of these decisions. So I just want to bring up some test cases of companies that I think are doing it really well. So I brought them up before, but League of Geeks, they post dessert things quite often. And it's a really cute little insight into something that they do outside of work that isn't games related, but that a lot of people can still associate and connect with. So lots of people like sweets and desserts, and it reminds fans that they are people outside of just the games they make. You still get to get to know the team a little, but like I said earlier, you don't have to rely on their face. You're still getting to know the team without showing their face. On the other side of this is a company like Filthy Casual. So in this case, they use their faces very commonly. They are the brand. They are this, 4 core people, and they are shown a lot. And so you know who they are. And this means that, for example, if they're at a convention, you know that they're the people who made it because you've seen their faces. It's almost like seeing a celebrity. It's exciting for the fans because they know who to interact with. Whereas a lot of the time, like I know for us, there's been a lot of cases where people come to our booth and, I'm having a chat with them and they're like, oh, cool. So the devs are based out of Australia. It's like, yes, we are. And that's always an interesting thing to play with, especially if you do plan to go to conventions and you do plan to go to customer-facing events. That's when you start to weigh up how advantageous is it to show our faces more publicly. So I just wanted to showcase some other examples of things that we've done. So a quote from a random PAX East attendee was, "What? You actually made beer? I thought that was a joke." We were sending out updates once a month that just let people know what we were doing and how things were going. Especially this was at a peak where we weren't releasing a lot of new games, so we didn't have a lot to be talking about. So we tried to come up with other ways that we could hype up the community, keep people engaged, keep people excited without it being fully focused on our games. So we collaborated with 3 different breweries across 3 different beers, which was also a really exciting thing to do, to take a step outside of the games industry and acknowledge the exciting, fun, unique, creative teams that are out there. There's so many small, local independent companies that you can work with outside of games and learn a lot from how they run their businesses and what they're doing. So yeah, we released 3 different beers. The first one sold out within 4 hours. They were all really fun events because we made new friends, we hung out with old friends, and it was just a nice environment to be in because it was a way that people could support us without having to necessarily buy our games. Another one is a time we were in Boston for PAX East and we went for a coffee break, and myself and one of the directors were both wearing Samurai Punk clothing, and the waitress working there was like, "Oh, hey, I like that t-shirt." I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And she's like, "Yeah, I've seen it on Instagram. I've seen that brand." And we're like, "That's so exciting. That's our brand." She's like, "No way, that's really cool. Yeah, I follow you on Instagram. I really like this design and stuff." Oh, it was awesome. It was such a cool moment. And another one that really stuck with me was we did Oz Comic Con 2019. And when we were there, we had pretty limited stock. It was a new event, so we were just kind of trialing it out. And a family came up, and the son wanted this particular t-shirt. We were sold out in his size, and it was kind of a case of like, I didn't want to push them to buy a t-shirt that didn't fit. So I just said, "No worries, I'm really sorry we don't have that size. You can either buy it online or we'll be at the next major convention, so we'll see you then." Didn't really think too much of it, but just had a genuine, nice interaction with the family. Fast forward to PAX Oz, however many months later, and this family starts walking up to our booth, and I was like, "Oh my God, I remember you. You wanted this t-shirt. We have it this time in this size. Did you want to try it on?" And they were so excited. They're like, not only did they have the product we had the product that they were obviously excited about, but I remembered who they were and was already like, "Yes, this is the one you wanted. We've got it now." It ended up with the kid who was like probably like 12 giving me a hug at the end and being like, I'm so excited, I wanted this shirt for so long, this is so awesome. And it's so heartwarming. And those sort of interactions come from sort of being genuine and just being nice to people and bonding over whatever you can bond over, even if it's, yeah, how's your Comic-Con going? So the last question is how to appear genuine, which I think is incredibly important. A large aspect of this is I worked in retail for 7+ years. It was my job to get people to want to shop at our store, especially working at EB Games. There's two major city stores. One is the flagship store, which is 3 levels, and the other one is basically a shoebox. There is no reason for people to shop at that shoebox. So the only way to do that is to give the best customer service ever so that people want to come back for that. So when we talk about appearing genuine and relating it to sales and how to get people engaged, I think the number one important thing that has to be established is not to chase the money and ensure that you're being genuine. So when I say that, that means that you shouldn't be motivated to sell 20 t-shirts. You should be motivated to find 20 people who really like t-shirts and sell them to them. And it seems like not a lot of difference, but it is. It means that you genuinely care about what the other person wants and what they're receiving versus just what you want. You want to make sure that both parties in the interaction are getting what they want and are both happy. So some convention or retail tips, and these are specifically for in-person interactions. However, they can be carried across and you can learn a lot from these. So for example, never ask a customer, what are you looking for? Or how many copies do you want as your first point of communication? We've all been in a store where someone's come up and tried to interact by being like, oh, are you looking for anything in particular? And immediately a wall goes up and you're like, I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not sure. Leave me alone. However, if you instead say, hey, how's your convention going? Or I'm taking a break soon. Have you played any cool games? I haven't had a chance to check out the show floor. Have you seen anything cool? They're there for that convention to play games. So you're already tapping into something that they probably want to talk about to some level. And maybe they'll still say, not really, and not want to have that interaction, and that's okay. But you're already more likely to have a genuine and real conversation with the person when you show that you're not just interested in them buying from you, you're actually interested in that person and what their interests are and what they care about and what they want. So the second point of that is try and get to know the actual person, and they're going to be a lot more receptive. So this is definitely something you can apply when you're not in your own city, and this definitely works for me a lot in the example of, overseas conventions, especially like PAX East, is, having a chat with a customer. They quite quickly probably pick up on your accent and acknowledge that you're not from the same place as them. And then you can just say, hey, yeah, I'm only here for a week. Do you recommend what's cool around here? Like, what should I make sure I go and see or do? And then now you've put them at the front and they're excited because everyone likes to talk about themselves or the things they know about. So now they're talking about the things that they care about and they like. You might pick up a tip or two if you care. But they now feel important. You're the one working at the booth, but you've put everything aside and said, no, it doesn't matter about that. I want to focus on you. Tell me about what you're interested in. Tell me about what's cool around this area. You're from here, you know this area. It's something you care about. Let's talk about that. Their guard is so far down in that situation. That's a lot easier to have those open, honest communication, and then they're more likely to turn around. So what about you? What's your team? Who's Samurai Punk? What do you do? And now you've suddenly got a clear line of communication. You've already established a level of trust and respect, and that person is a lot more interested to, let's say, come again the next year and be like, hey, that was a nice conversation I had. I wonder if that person's still there. I wonder if that team's around again. So with all these points, I do want to emphasize again, the misuse of the term manipulation versus influence. It is not manipulative to consciously ask someone specific questions to make them feel more comfortable. it would be more manipulative to say, I'm only going to ask these questions so that they can buy my t-shirt, because that's not what I'm encouraging you to do. I'm encouraging you to get to know, to genuinely try and get to know people and ask them questions about themselves so that they can open up to you and at least give you a chance to talk about what you do. And that doesn't mean giving you a chance to sell them on something, because that's not what you're really there to do. You're there to sell your company and your brand as an idea, and then anything that they actually want to spend money on is their conscious decision to do up to that. So we talk about the core questions. I'm just putting them all on one slide again to make it a bit easier. So how do you make a fan feel like a regular? How can you show yourself without being the literal face of the studio? What are you doing to keep people engaged and providing them to support you? What do you want people to say your brand is about? And how do you appear genuine? So I think if you can answer all these questions and address them for your company, you're going to have a much greater success. You're going to have much greater success in creating a solid brand and a company that people want to care about, and a company that people want to invest their time and energy to be a super fan of. So that's me, beer, Spunky Apparel, all the random survivor comments throughout the talk. These are my socials and the company's socials. So yeah, thank you so much.